Hey fellas, and welcome back to Quite with a Y. Just hopping on here today to talk about nothing important. I wanted to give a quick I hate you to Sigmund Freud. You've probably heard a lot of those over the years, but that dude also apparently created the term oral fixation, and I'm just really hate how much he's contributed to the modern vocabulary of TikTok. It's unfortunate that it's relevant to what I came here to talk about today, because as children, I'm sure we all have our stories about things we were told not to put in our mouths. A lot of times it was like preemptively, like your parents knew that toddlers were prone to putting small objects inside of their mouth to like try and eat it, and then they die and choke. You've all seen the preservation packets on the inside of, well, a lot of things. I don't really even know where to start. But the list I want to go down today is the things that I had to be told not to put in my mouth after they had already been found in my mouth. I don't think I could have physically made the wording on this build-up any weirder, but I mean, here we are. I've made a little write-up, a Google Doc here, of all the things that I remember very specifically in my head, and the reasoning at the time for why I enjoyed teething on things. Now, this first section is things that I would not only put in my mouth, but I would eat them. Like, I would just treat them like sustenance. I think the goat of things I wasn't supposed to eat, but often did, was Play-Doh. In kindergarten, when they wouldn't hand out snacks between breakfast and lunch, I mean, you had to make do with what you had. During recess or indoor playtime, whatever you guys had, if they had some Play-Doh left over in one of the cans, everybody got curious, and when you took a nibble, it turns out that Play-Doh has a really rich, salty flavor. It was like if seawater was a lot less strong and was more of like an aesthetic. In my head, it's what olives wish they were. I honestly feel this way, but instead of using olives, I really think we should be putting little balls of Play-Doh onto margaritas. It would just taste a lot better. Also, you can source a lot more of them at once. Like, you just pick up a big tub and you've got like an entire week's worth of like toppings. But it had really bright colors, which made it attractive to me to get my hands on. It had like a nice texture in your mouth, definitely not unlike gum. You could mix and match different Play-Dohs and really customize it. I feel like a lot of people or kids got into cooking because of messing around with that kind of thing at that age. And it was something specific about Play-Doh, because I remember playing around with like normal colored clay that mixed colors a lot better, and I just like didn't really enjoy the taste of them. They tasted more like rope than salt. But yeah, definitely top 5 non-edible food item. Another big one for me was erasers, and I bring this one up specifically because this is probably the one that caused me the most issues over my elementary school career. I would chew on these and eat these much less as a necessity and more as like, without even thinking about it, I would just be nibbling on the back end of my eraser. It starts with teething it, but then you get like too aggressive and the eraser comes off. I don't know, I don't want to spit this on the floor because then I'm leaving evidence, so I would eat it. I want to remind all of you, I was single digits of age when I did this, and I guarantee you guys have equally as bad stories if you have a mouth at all. Because of that, I had to get a lot of those secondary erasers you'd stick on the back end of a pencil, usually for when the eraser was just a nub from overuse or dried out. Unfortunately, the bright colors on those had a similar effect that Play-Doh did, and I would chew on them way more than I should. It was a consistent issue that I had to deal with promptly, and since I've been an adult, I've kept very few amounts of pencils in my household, and when I do have them, they are out of sight, because I still do the same thing with biting like the plastic end of a pen. It's just those are a little more solid, so they can take a little more punishment. The part where it really gave me issues, though, was that sometimes, even despite all my preparation, I would have the extra erasers on deck. I would bring like a rectangle one with me. Sometimes, though, I just didn't have all my ducks in a row. I'd have to borrow a pencil from someone else, which I would very much appreciate, but unfortunately my base instincts were like rarely overridden by my goodwill and somebody being nice to me. I remember I used to, without thinking, continue to bite the ends of erasers off of pencils that I had borrowed from somebody in like first grade, and I think the thing that was a real wake-up call for me is that like I got caught. When I had to give the pencil back, I realized, oh shit, I bit off the end. And they're like, what the fuck did you do to it? Did you make that many mistakes? Not that that would explain the teeth-shaped marks and where the eraser used to be, but... And then I got called out in front of the whole class by the teacher who's like, was honestly in a much nicer way than I probably deserved, telling me, now how did that make you feel if someone were to do that to your pencil? Looking back, I'd probably be more miffed that I didn't get to eat it before someone else, but I understood the point of view. And as far as my memory tells me, I've never done it again, but it was a long time ago, so I can't really say for sure. Another tidbit with the erasers that I really liked to, when there was out of an eraser, I would, for some reason, think it was a good idea to bite on the now empty metal bit to squeeze out what was left of the eraser. so I could then chew on that. I don't even know why I did it. Like, it was essentially using it like gum. Then again, teachers really fucking hated gum in elementary and middle school. You would have thought that Trident gum was like a fucking lobbyist group stopping teachers from getting paid more. I don't know, the teachers probably knew better than me, but they hated that shit back in elementary school. But yeah, the erasers are a point of shame for me and are probably part of the same issue for why I bit my fingernails off for so long. Now, this next one is actually the most intentional snack that I've put in my mouth when it shouldn't have been. Paper is an S-tier emergency snack, and I mean that in like, I would fall back on this bad boy more than once if I really needed to. There was more than one occasion where lunch wasn't for another hour, but I'm not allowed to eat in class until like I'm in high school, and it depends on the teachers who don't suck. So in the scenario I'm describing, I'm in like at 3rd grade at max. Never really mentioned this before, but I get low blood sugar really easily. Like, I don't have diabetes or anything, but it just like comes on if I don't have the right balanced meal in the morning, or I honestly am not really sure about the triggers. It feels inconsistent. It's that clammy feeling where you just feel like really weak and like you might pass out. Whenever I get like that, I feel as if I could inhale any type of food or anything really to satiate my hunger until it passes. But after it's gone, it doesn't matter how much you ate because it will never have made you feel better during while it's there. And afterwards, you're just left with all the food you put in your stomach and you feel really bloated. You gotta shit big time later, so there's that. It doesn't really change how awful I feel when I'm in it. Like, I have to lay down on my carpet that hasn't been vacuumed in 7 years. But paper was like fairly soft. Like, I knew I could like chew on it easy enough. It was readily available no matter what class I was in, no matter where I was. I probably had some in my backpack. If I was at home and there was no food in the pantry, there was definitely printer paper somewhere. And if I really just was hankering for it, there were times where I would be delirious enough to rip up a piece of paper into little chewable sections and then pop them in my mouth and honestly take a long time to actually digest it. I don't know why. I had a uniquely hard time making myself swallow the paper. This is such a weird little detail, but I think it was training for being able to dry swallow pills later in life. It kind of sucks because it didn't even really help with the gag reflex, just this specific instance of putting things in my mouth, pills. Like, I still almost vomit every time I try to brush the back of my tongue too long. An honorable mention I'm going to put on this list because it's one that I hear a lot of people talk about and referenced as like the go-to joke for things that kids eat as kids. They are crayons, and I didn't realize this, but when I one time called gay people crayon munchers as like a rainbow kind of joke, I found out not too long after that apparently Marines are also called crayon munchers. Like, a weird coincidence. I had never had that. I just thought I had come up with something neat. Maybe I stole it from somewhere subconsciously. The reason I bring this up though, even though it wasn't really a part of my childhood eating things I wasn't supposed to experience, I hear a lot of discourse around it. Like, people talk about it as if they're wine tasters or wine sommeliers. They say different colors had different flavors, which, I mean, that is how they usually coat them on things you're supposed to eat. And that crunchiness I can imagine being satisfying. And when you saw those documentaries, I think it might have been Reading Rainbow, where you saw how crayons got made in the factory. They just looked very appetizing, man. This last one isn't from me, but it's an honorable mention from a friend of mine. They said they ate a firefly on a bet, I think, but they said it tasted like a burnt marshmallow, which, hearing that now, kind of piques my adult curiosity. Not adult as in, like, I want to do adult things, but, like, I am currently an adult and curious. But yeah, let me know the dumb things you ate as a child and definitely should not be eating as a child. I do not encourage anybody in my audience, who are all adults, to go and eat things that are not safe to eat. If you want to send me any topics for a video, an issue you're having, stories you got, hit that kwytebox@gmail.com. Anyways, piss off.